Have you ever heard of the beast of Sugarloaf Mountain? It's a story that blurs the line between fact and folklore, a creature that has haunted the forests of Maryland for decades. Welcome back to the channel, and today, we're diving deep into the mystery of this American cryptid. Our story begins in the 1960s, a time of drive-in movies and rock and roll. But in the quiet, rural areas around Sugarloaf Mountain, something strange was stirring. Local newspapers started printing sensational headlines about a huge, hairy beast roaming the countryside. Eyewitnesses described a creature that was part ape, part bear, and entirely terrifying. Standing over 7 feet tall, covered in dark fur, with glowing red eyes, it quickly earned a chilling nickname, the Dwyo. One of the most famous encounters happened in 1965. A group of friends were out for a late night drive near the mountain when they saw something truly bizarre. A massive, bipedal creature was reportedly fighting with a large, black dog. The sounds were described as unearthly, a mix of growls, screeches, and snarls. The witnesses, terrified, sped away, their story becoming a local legend. Overnight, was this the Dwyo, or something else entirely? As the years went by, the sightings continued. People reported finding massive, unidentifiable footprints pressed deep into the mud. Farmers complained of strange noises in the night and livestock that had been spooked or, in some cases, had vanished without a trace. The legend of the beast of Sugarloaf Mountain grew with each new tale, whispered around campfires and debated in local diners. Skeptics, of course, have their own theories. They suggest that what people were seeing was likely a misidentified black bear, perhaps standing on its hind legs. Maryland does have a black bear population, and from a distance, in poor light. It's easy to see how one could be mistaken for something more monstrous. Others believe it could have been a prankster in a gorilla suit, taking advantage of the growing hysteria. It wouldn't be the first time a local legend was fueled by a practical joker, but the believers stand firm. They argue that a bear doesn't explain the glowing red eyes or the sheer size and speed reported by so many different people over so many years. Some cryptozoologists even theorize that the Dwyo could be a surviving Gigantopithecus, a giant prehistoric ape thought to be long extinct. Could a small population have survived, hidden deep in the dense forests of the Appalachian Mountains? As modern technology advanced, you'd think we'd have captured some clear evidence by now. But the Dwyo remains as elusive as ever. Despite trail cams and amateur investigators combing the woods, no definitive proof has ever been found. The creature seems to exist only in fleeting glimpses, grainy photos, and the chilling stories passed down through generations. So, what do you think? Is the beast of Sugarloaf Mountain a real, undiscovered primate? A case of mass hysteria and mistaken identity? Or is it something else? Something that defies our understanding of the natural world? The woods around Sugarloaf Mountain hold their secrets close. Perhaps some mysteries are never meant to be solved, leaving us to wonder what might be lurking just beyond the edge of the firelight. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you have your own theory about the Dwyo or know of a similar legend, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest mysteries. See you next time. Imagine this. You're deep in the breathtaking wilderness of Yellowstone National Park. The air is crisp. The stars are out, and you're tucked into your tent, ready for a peaceful night's sleep. But what happens when that peace is shattered? That is exactly what happened in a chilling incident involving a camper whose tent was found completely torn apart. Today, we're piecing together the story, looking at the evidence and exploring the powerful forces of nature at play in one of America's most iconic wild spaces, Our story begins in a backcountry campsite, miles from the nearest road. A solo hiker had set up camp for the night, following all the park's safety guidelines. They stored their food properly in a bear-proof container, kept a clean camp, and were well prepared for the elements. But sometime during the night, something went terribly wrong. The next morning, fellow hikers stumbled upon a scene that looked like something out of a horror movie. The tent was shredded, poles were snapped, and gear was scattered everywhere. But most terrifyingly, the camper was nowhere to be found. Park rangers were immediately called to the scene. Their first priority was a search and rescue operation. Every second counts in these situations. The rangers, highly trained in tracking and wilderness survival, began combing the area for any sign of the missing person. They looked for footprints, broken branches, anything that could lead them to the camper. The big question on everyone's mind was, what could have caused this level of destruction? The initial evidence pointed towards a large animal. The tears in the tent fabric weren't clean cuts. They were jagged rips, suggesting immense power. The campsite was located in prime grizzly bear habitat. Yellowstone is home to one of the largest populations of grizzly bears. In the lower 48 states, these are incredibly powerful animals, with adult males weighing up to 700 pounds. While bear encounters are a known risk, an attack on a tent, especially when food attractants are properly managed, is relatively rare. So, what provoked this? Rangers investigated the scene meticulously. They found large tracks around the campsite, confirming their suspicions of a grizzly. But why did it attack? One theory is that the bear may have been surprised. Perhaps the camper made a noise in their sleep that startled the animal as it passed by. A startled bear, feeling threatened, can react defensively and with incredible force. Another possibility is a food-conditioned bear. This happens when a bear learns to associate humans and their gear with food, often due to improper food storage by previous campers. Even if our hiker did everything right, a previously conditioned bear might investigate any tent, hoping for a meal. After an intense, nerve-wracking search, the story took a positive turn. The missing camper was found. They were located several miles from the campsite, shaken and exhausted, but thankfully alive and with only minor injuries. Here's what they said happened. They were awakened in the middle of the night by the terrifying sound of something huge tearing into their tent. In a moment of pure adrenaline and survival instinct, they managed to scramble out of the wreckage and run into the darkness, not stopping until they felt they were a safe distance away. They spent the rest of the night hidden, waiting for daylight. It was a harrowing tale of a close call with one of nature's most formidable predators. This incident is a powerful reminder that when we enter places like Yellowstone, we are visitors in the home of wild animals. It underscores the critical importance of following safety protocols. Always store your food, toiletries, and anything with a scent in a bear-proof container or a designated food locker. Never cook or eat in your tent. Make noise while you hike to avoid surprising a bear. Carry bear spray and know how to use it. These aren't just suggestions. They are life-saving rules. The camper's story, while terrifying, ultimately serves as a crucial lesson in respecting the wild and coexisting safely with its inhabitants. Thanks for watching. If you found this story interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content about the great outdoors. Stay safe out there. Have you ever been deep in the woods, just as the sun begins to set, and heard a sound that didn't quite belong? A sound that sent a shiver down your spine. Today, we're rediving into the unsettling story of a man who heard a strange whistling in the forest, and made the fateful decision to follow it. Our story begins with an experienced hiker named Ethan. For years, Ethan had explored the vast wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains. He knew the trails, the sounds of the wildlife, and the feeling of the forest at different times of the day. He respected the woods, but never feared them. That is, until one particular autumn evening. Ethan was on a multi-day solo trek, miles from any town or road. He had just set up his camp for the night, near a quiet stream. As dusk painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, a stillness fell over the forest. The usual chorus of birds and insects faded away, leaving an almost unnatural silence. That's when he heard it, for the first time. It was a simple, melodic whistle. A 7-note tune, clear as a bell, that seemed to drift through the trees from somewhere deeper in the woods. Ethan froze, listening intently. It wasn't a bird. He knew all the local calls. It was too perfect, too human-like. But who would be whistling out here, so far from everything? He called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" The only reply was the gentle gurgling of the stream. The whistling had stopped. Shrugging it off as a trick of the wind or his own tired mind, Ethan started a small fire and began preparing his dinner. But just as he settled down to eat, the whistling returned. The same 7-note melody, a little closer this time. A sense of unease began to creep over him. It felt like he was being watched. A feeling he'd never experienced so strongly before. He scanned the dense tree line, his heart pounding a little faster. Nothing, just shadows growing longer as the last light of day vanished. He tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just his imagination running wild. But the whistling became more persistent. It would stop for a few minutes, then start again, each time seeming to inch closer to his camp. It was no longer just a sound, it was a presence. Ethan's curiosity, mixed with a growing sense of dread, got the better of him. He felt an inexplicable pull, a strange compulsion to find the source of the tune. It was a melody that was both eerie and strangely alluring. Against his better judgment, he grabbed his most powerful flashlight and left the safety of his campfire. "This is a bad idea," he muttered to himself, but his feet were already moving, carrying him into the dark woods. He followed the sound, which now seemed to be beckoning him, leading him off the familiar trail and into a part of the forest he didn't recognize. The trees grew thicker, their branches tangling together overhead, blocking out the starlight. With every step he took, the whistling seemed to move, always just a little bit ahead, like a ghostly guide leading him deeper into the labyrinth of trees. He called out again, his voice trembling slightly. "Who's there?" Silence. Then the 7-note tune echoed from his left. He turned, and it came from his right. It was all around him, a disorienting symphony of one simple, haunting melody. Panic began to set in. He realized he was completely lost. He stopped, trying to get his bearings, but everything looked the same in the dark. The whistling stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the sound itself. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. He stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, his flashlight beam cutting a nervous path through the darkness. And then he heard a new sound, a soft crunch of dry leaves, just behind him. He spun around, sweeping his light across the trees. For a split second, his beam caught something. Two pale, reflective eyes, low to the ground, blinked back at him from the shadows before vanishing. His blood ran cold. That wasn't an animal he recognized. Ethan didn't wait to see what it was. He turned and ran, crashing blindly through the underbrush. The haunting 7-note whistle now echoing all around him, seeming to mock his terror. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out, finally collapsing at the edge of the very stream he had camped by. He scrambled back to his campsite, threw his gear into his pack, and hiked through the entire night, not daring to stop until the sun rose and he found a familiar trail marker. Ethan never hiked alone in that part of the mountains again. This day, he can't explain what he experienced that night. Was it another person playing a cruel prank? Was it some strange natural phenomenon? Or was it something else entirely? Something ancient and territorial that lives in the deep, dark woods, luring the curious to their doom with a simple, whistled tune. What do you think was out there in the woods with Ethan? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more unsettling tales from the wild. Stay safe out there. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, a place of breathtaking beauty, misty peaks, and sprawling forests. But beneath its serene surface lie stories of mystery and disappearance. One of the most haunting is the story of the Martin family. It was June 14, 1969, a perfect day for a family outing. Dennis Martin, a bright and energetic 6-year-old, was on a camping trip with his father, his older brother, and his grandparents. The family was enjoying a hike near Spence Field, a beautiful meadow high in the mountains. The boys decided to play a classic prank on the adults. They would split up, hide in the bushes on either side of the trail, and jump out to scare them as they walked past. Dennis's father, brother, and grandfather all took their hiding spots. Dennis, wearing a bright red shirt, was supposed to circle around and hide on the other side. His brother saw him duck behind a bush, and that was it. That was the last time anyone ever saw Dennis Martin. When the adults walked by and only one boy jumped out, the fun and games instantly turned to panic. They called Dennis's name. Silence. They searched the immediate area. Nothing. The family realized something was terribly wrong. They quickly hiked back down to report him missing. What followed was the largest search operation in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Over 1,400 people, including the National Guard and Green Berets, scoured the rugged terrain. Helicopters and search dogs were brought in. The search area expanded to over 56 square miles. Everyone was looking for a little boy in a red shirt. But the search turned up almost nothing. A fierce thunderstorm rolled in that first night, washing away any potential tracks Dennis might have left. Days turned into weeks. The searchers were baffled. How could a 6-year-old boy simply vanish without a trace in such a short amount of time? A few clues did emerge, but they only deepened the mystery. Another family hiking nearby reported hearing a terrifying scream shortly after Dennis disappeared. Later, they saw a rough-looking man hiding in the bushes off the trail. Another witness claimed to have seen a boy matching Dennis' description getting into a car with a man miles away from the park. But these leads never went anywhere conclusive. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence came from a searcher who found a small set of footprints, barefoot, leading up a steep, difficult creek bed. They seemed to follow an animal trail. Some of the prints had a larger footprint from a shod boot right beside them, almost as if someone was stalking the child. But like everything else, the trail went cold. The official search was eventually called off. The consensus was that Dennis had likely gotten lost, succumbed to the elements, and his remains were taken by wildlife. But his family, especially his father, never accepted that. He spent the rest of his life searching, convinced that Dennis had been abducted. He believed the scream. The man in the bushes and the sighting in the car were all connected. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Was Dennis Martin simply a tragic victim of the unforgiving wilderness? Or did something more sinister happen on that sunny afternoon in the mountains? The Great Smoky Mountains hold their secrets close, and the fate of Dennis Martin is one of its most enduring and heartbreaking mysteries. What do you think happened? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more unsolved mysteries. Tonight, we're venturing into the heart of the Pacific Northwest, to a place shrouded in mist and local legend. This isn't just any old bridge. Locals call it Bigfoot Bridge. And the stories say that if you're brave enough to wait, you might see something truly extraordinary cross it at the stroke of midnight. Our story begins in a small, isolated town, surrounded by dense, ancient forests. For generations, people here have whispered tales of a large ape-like creature roaming the woods. But the sightings became incredibly specific, centering on this one particular steel truss bridge that spans a deep, fog-filled ravine. The first documented account dates back to the 1960s, from a truck driver who swore he had to slam on his brakes to avoid hitting a massive, hairy figure that lumbered across the road and disappeared over the bridge's railing. Since then, the legend has only grown. Campers, late-night drivers, and local teenagers looking for a thrill have all reported similar experiences. They describe a towering silhouette, moving with surprising speed and grace, illuminated for just a moment by their headlights before vanishing into the darkness on the other side. Some have found massive, unidentifiable footprints left in the mud near the bridge's entrance the next morning. What makes this bridge so special? Some paranormal investigators and cryptozoologists believe it could be a crossing point between two large territories for the creature. The deep ravine it spans would be difficult to cross otherwise, making the man-made structure an ideal pathway. It's a bottleneck, a natural funnel for anything or anyone moving through this vast wilderness. One of the most compelling accounts comes from a group of college students who decided to test the legend in 2012. They set up a motion-activated camera near the far end of the bridge and waited in their car. Right around midnight, they heard a heavy thud on the bridge's surface, like something incredibly heavy had just stepped onto it. The sound was followed by a series of slow, deliberate footsteps. They were too terrified to look, but their camera captured a fleeting, blurry image of a tall, dark shape moving against the night sky. The footage is controversial, of course, but for believers, it's proof. Skeptics argue it's just a mix of folklore, misidentification, and the power of suggestion. They say, what people are seeing is likely just a bear, a large moose, or even a person in a costume playing a prank. The fog, the eerie silence of the woods, and the late hour all contribute to an atmosphere where the mind can play tricks. The sounds could be anything, from falling rocks to the bridge settling. The footprints, easily faked. That the sheer consistency of the sightings is what keeps the legend alive. Always a tall, bipedal creature. Always near midnight. And always on this bridge. Could it be a collective delusion, or is there something real out there, using our own infrastructure to navigate its ancient domain? Tonight, armed with our own gear, we're going to stay here until midnight. We'll set up our own cameras, use thermal imaging, and see if we can finally solve the mystery of the bridge where Bigfoot crosses. Stay with us. You won't want to miss this. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our findings. Tonight, we're venturing into the heart of the Pacific Northwest, to a place shrouded in mist and local legend. This isn't just any old bridge. Locals call it Bigfoot Bridge. And the stories say that if you're brave enough to wait, you might see something truly extraordinary cross it at the stroke of midnight. Our story begins in a small, isolated town, surrounded by dense, ancient forests. For generations, people here have whispered tales of a large ape-like creature roaming the woods. But the sightings became incredibly specific, centering on this one particular steel truss bridge that spans a deep, fog-filled ravine. The first documented account dates back to the 1960s, from a truck driver who swore he had to slam on his brakes to avoid hitting a massive, hairy figure that lumbered across the road and disappeared over the bridge's railing. Since then, the legend has only grown. Campers, late-night drivers, and local teenagers looking for a thrill have all reported similar experiences. They describe a towering silhouette, moving with surprising speed and grace, illuminated for just a moment by their headlights before vanishing into the darkness on the other side. Some have found massive, unidentifiable footprints left in the mud near the bridge's entrance the next morning. What makes this bridge so special? Some paranormal investigators and cryptozoologists believe it could be a crossing point between two large territories for the creature. The deep ravine it spans would be difficult to cross otherwise, making the man-made structure an ideal pathway. It's a bottleneck, a natural funnel for anything or anyone moving through this vast wilderness. One of the most compelling accounts comes from a group of college students who decided to test the legend in 2012. They set up a motion-activated camera near the far end of the bridge and waited in their car. Right around midnight, they heard a heavy thud on the bridge's surface, like something incredibly heavy had just stepped onto it. The sound was followed by a series of slow, deliberate footsteps. They were too terrified to look, but their camera captured a fleeting, blurry image of a tall, dark shape moving against the night sky. The footage is controversial, of course, but for believers, it's proof. Skeptics argue it's just a mix of folklore, misidentification, and the power of suggestion. They say, what people are seeing is likely just a bear, a large moose, or even a person in a costume playing a prank. The fog, the eerie silence of the woods, and the late hour all contribute to an atmosphere where the mind can play tricks. The sounds could be anything, from falling rocks to the bridge settling. The footprints easily faked. That the sheer consistency of the sightings is what keeps the legend alive. Always a tall, bipedal creature. Always near midnight. And always on this bridge. Could it be a collective delusion, or is there something real out there, using our own infrastructure to navigate its ancient domain? Tonight, armed with our own gear, we're going to stay here until midnight. We'll set up our own cameras, use thermal imaging, and see if we can finally solve the mystery of the bridge where Bigfoot crosses. Stay with us. You won't want to miss this. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our findings.